Hello, class. This is Mrs. Grissom. I am sorry to not be with you today. I have a bad cold and coughing and sneezing and all that. So I'm just going to do this video. Hopefully, I can get through it without coughing too much. And then you can watch it during class, or for those of you who are at home, you can watch it at home. So, first of all, let's take a look at your assignment sheet. This week you have pages 63 through 70 in grammar, and also it's the week for the book report for Johnny Tremain. So we'll be going over in this video how to do that book report. But first let's start with page 63 in grammar. This is pretty straightforward. It's about correcting a run-on sentence. You guys have already been doing that. These instructions want you to actually correct these sentences, these run-ons, by forming two sentences. So separating the two ideas with a period and a capital letter. There are other ways to fix a run-on sentence, but for this page, that's what you're going to practice doing. If you turn the page, you'll see some more practice on correcting run-ons, identifying them and correcting them. In exercise C at the bottom here, make it a little bigger, they want you to now correct using a comma and a coordinating conjunction. Or you can also use a period and a capital letter, just whichever way you think sounds best. On page 65, you have more correcting run-ons. And next page, a little bit of review. So you're going to look for verbs first and then subjects. Be sure you remember to check for compound verbs or compound subjects, and also those verb phrases, those helping verbs sometimes slip by you. On page 67, there's some more review of run-ons and fragments, fixing those. Whoops, sorry. And then 68 through 70 are a master review, so it kind of covers all the grammar that you've learned so far. Do all of those. And I forgot to tell you, I think in class the other day, but from now on, you will do all of the sentences in each exercise unless I say otherwise, so no more odds only. At the bottom of the very last page, page 70, there's some extra diagramming to do. You may omit exercise H. Do not do exercise H. Okay, now we need to talk about... before I forget, hang on a second. Sorry, I'm interrupting myself. For your homework that was due, or that is due today in class, Monday today, you are going to hold on to that and turn it in next week, okay? You had grammar and a summary of a section in history. So that's what you had to turn in to me. Just hang on to it and you can turn it in class on Monday. Now we need to talk about this book report on Johnny Tremain. And I want to tell you now that this is a learning curve for me. I have been doing this class for 22 years. And I think that's right. 22 years. And there was one way a book report was written, the Abeka format. And now with the new Abeka book, they've totally changed the format for the book report. And it's going to take me a little bit to get used to it. I'm not sure I like it yet. But because this is the resource they give you, I want to go ahead and do it the way it's described here in the book. So it's a little bit more complicated. If you're familiar with the old book report style, this will be a little different for you. Okay, some things are the same though. So let's take a look at how to write a book report. There are three main parts. There's going to be an introduction, which is just one paragraph. Then there's the body, which will be a couple of paragraphs, and then a concluding paragraph. I don't grade based on length of papers, but I think it's going to take you probably 2 pages to do this, and maybe a little bit more, but probably 2 pages to get it done. Okay, so a couple of general notes. Let me see if I can write it here on the screen. You need to, I think you know this, but you have to use Times New Roman's font. That's for all of Mars Hill. Please use 12-point font. The size should be 12 point, and double space. Oops. That's really important because I like to write little notes to you about your writing. And I need space in order to do that. Let me think if there's something else. Double space. Okay. Another thing I was going to say is because this is new and unfortunately I'm not there in person to help you, I'm going to consider this. Excuse me. We're going to consider this a rough draft. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. I really do want you to do your best on it, do your best to follow it, but I will make corrections and then you can take it home and fix it and come back before you get a grade, okay? So, this will be a completion grade. Excuse me. I apologize for all the coughing. Okay, let's try to get through this. So you just read a book by Esther Forbes, Johnny Tremain. So some things to think about before you get started. Excuse me. We may talk about her a little bit in class next week. Oh, excuse me. I keep restarting this video, so I'm just going to keep going. I apologize for the coughing, but I've restarted 3 times now already. Okay. This book by Esther Forbes, you should think about what kind of book is it? Well, it's fiction, right? It's not a true story, but it's based in a particular period in history that's true, that happened, so we call it historical fiction. Excuse me. So the very first paragraph, this is kind of like following a recipe. I think of it when you're learning to cook, you stick pretty closely to the recipe. And then once you get really good at that, you can do a good job preparing the food. Then you can spice it up and change it. But for 8th grade, I want you, when you do a book report, to follow this format because it will help you be clear and concise, and it'll teach you a good standard way of writing a book report. And as you move on through school, you might come up with better ways or more stylish ways to write them. Okay, but we're going to stick closely to the Abeka recipe for the book report. The introduction, the first paragraph, it should always start with a sentence that includes the title of the book. Don't forget to italicize the title, the author, and the subject or theme of the book. The subject or the theme is very brief. So yours is going to say something like, and you can put those in any order. It doesn't have to be that order. But those 3 pieces of information have to be included in the very first sentence. So something like, Johnny Tremain by Esther Forbes is a story of a boy growing up during the Revolutionary War period, or something like that. It's kind of a coming-of-age story set in Boston in the 1700s. You can play with it however you want. It's just very brief description of the book. Now, this is something that's new that we never had before. Part B, 1B, the next part of the next part of your introductory paragraph, they tell you to summarize the book in 2 to 3 sentences. That is very brief. That's a very brief summary. So you just practiced summaries last week. This is going to be an incredibly brief summary. Let's talk about what you should include in that summary. Well, this is a fiction book, so it's just going to be the basic plot. You're not going to be able to include all the characters, all the different parts of the story. They're not going to fit. You're going to have to take it down to the bare minimum. So in this story, I would think, what does your reader need to know the basics? You need to know Johnny Tremaine, probably the fact that he's an orphan, a silversmith apprentice, um, probably something very basic about his character, like he's proud, and sort of due to that pride, he ends up injured and he can't be an apprentice anymore. Gets involved with Sons of Liberty and through his job with Rab, the printer, and then probably just that at the end of the story, he has now, and this is probably giving it away if some of you haven't finished the book, but the fact that he's going to be working for the revolution, he's helping with the revolution. So I just said quite a few facts, more than three facts, but those could be weaved, that you could weave those facts into two to three, probably three sentences. Then you're going to, I think you should be sure that your summary includes the setting. The setting of a story includes the time period and the location. Okay? So those are things to include in that summary. And then you're going to close out that introductory paragraph with your thesis statement. The thesis statement of any paper is probably the most important statement in the whole paper. It's going to focus the reader on the main point of the whole point of this book report. So this is new too. This is new. It used to be that you chose one point to prove, but now you're going to choose two aspects of the book. By aspect, I mean a moral, a concept, or a principle that made an impression on you. So I want you to think about Esther Forbes and what she might have been trying to say to readers. What does she think about? What does she think about life? What are some things that were valuable to her, or what she believed, based on how she wrote this book? So that's what writers do. Sometimes writers intentionally are trying to make a point to their reader, but sometimes they're just wanting to write a story, but they, out of their own worldview, they will write the story so you can see what they believe. Does that make sense? Basically, what does the writer, the author, believe about life? Some aspect of life. So you might agree with them or you might disagree. Esther Forbes wrote a nice story. She's trying to write a good moral story, so you're probably going to agree with her lessons that she has in her book or the way she sees the world. Sometimes you'll read a book that you're not going to agree. It's not going to be in alignment with your thoughts on life. So you don't have to agree with it to think the author is trying to influence you this way. Does that make sense? So you're not, also, you don't want to over Christianize. That's not really a word, but you know what I mean. You don't want to make it Christian if it's not really there. So you might learn a lesson and see a lesson for you, but we're looking for things that the author actually thinks. So let's talk about, if I were there with you in person, I would have you all throw out some ideas. I'm going to tell you some ideas from Johnny Tremaine that over the years students have pulled out of the book. Let's see my notes here. One thing that I think really stands out as a lesson has to do with pride. You might say that the author shows that pride goes before a fall, or pride is a dangerous character flaw, or something about the negativity of pride, how pride is a bad thing. And the reason I say that is because the boy's life totally goes off track because of the way he prided himself on his skills. He was bossy, and that ended up hurting him. He hurt people with his pride, and then he ended up getting hurt back. And that's just one example of his pride. And if you think about how he behaved when he was trying to find a job, Johnny would hide his injured hand because he was embarrassed for it to be seen. And that just sort of slowed him down. Instead of just sort of being open and honest about it, he was embarrassed. He was too proud to let his weakness show. That might be another example of pride. Some other lessons you might think about. This story has some things to say about how to mature. How does a boy become a man? What goes into that maturing process? You might say that through it takes some trials in life to come to maturity. And you could certainly think of several trials that Johnny goes through, but through that process, he comes out on the other end humbled and responsible for others. So he really grows over the course of the book. Friendship is another topic that students will pull out or aspect. The importance of friendship, or how friendship can help you through hard times. And then another thought is just at the end of the story, you see that Johnny Tremain, who began the book being selfish and sort of self centered, by the end of the book, he's thinking of others, and he is going to lay down his life for this greater cause of the revolution. So that might get you started thinking about a couple of aspects of the story that you can talk about. Now, your thesis statement you're going to have to think about how to word it in the most concise way to fit both of those aspects into one sentence. Okay, so Esther Forbes illustrates or demonstrates the importance of friendship and the I'm sorry, I'm blanking because my brain is fried from this cold. The trying to make it parallel. The danger of pride in Johnny Tremain, in the story Johnny Tremain, or in this book. There's a better way to word that. But pick your two ideas. How are you going to pick your aspects of the book? Well, you want to be sure that you can come up with two examples of each. And it doesn't have to be the same character illustrating both of the. It could be two different characters illustrating one point, like friendship. You might think of Rab was such a good friend to Johnny, and Celia was a good friend. So if you went with that topic, then that would be two examples. Okay, so far all we've discussed is the first introductory paragraph. You know what to write for the first sentence, then you do your very brief summary, and then you close with your thesis statement. Then we get down to the body, and this outline that they create is helpful. So think about Roman numeral 1. That is the first aspect. So if you did pride, it would be the danger of pride. And then A and B. And so you're going to come up, your A and your B are going to be too specific. It can be like a quote from the story. It could be just describing something that happened in the story that illustrates that point. And then Roman numeral 2 is the second lesson or aspect of the story, and then the two examples that prove that. So the body is at the minimum of two paragraphs, a paragraph for Roman numeral 1 and another paragraph for Roman numeral 2. So each of those paragraphs is going to start with a topic sentence stating the aspect, and then using incidents, details, or quotations to illustrate that aspect. And they show you how to use quotes. They really want you to have some quotes in here, and they tell you how to do it. I think you can't have too many quotes in a paper, personally. So I'm going to say they tell you that you need to have a quotation for each aspect or each lesson learned, or at least two quotations for each lesson learned. No, I'm sorry. Sorry, this is new to me. I apologize. Have at least two quotations, one for each lesson learned. So at least I'm going to look for at least one actual quotation for your whole paper. Okay. Then, so that's going to take up some time to go through that process, proving you have 2 points to prove, Roman numeral 1 and 2. Under each of those, you need 2 examples to prove it. Okay. And then the conclusion, again, you're going to restate your thesis and you don't want to reword it using the same exact words. Try to put it in different words. And then you get to say your thoughts about the book, whether they're favorable or unfavorable. And here, I would like you to say what is good or what is bad about the book. You could say whether the thoughts are, if you agree with them or not. You can also discuss the writer's writing style. You might appreciate the lifelike characters or bringing history to life. You could talk about, you might think it's too melodramatic. You can be negative or positive. Just say your thoughts on the writing style, the content, the message of the story. Okay, so you can also use this sample book report to kind of see how they did it. Exercises, again, exercise A and the B in the bottom, you can ignore that. You're not doing these as an exercise, you're just using it as an example for how to write your paper. And do your best. Let's see, how do I go back? Sorry. Here we go. So we'll consider this a rough draft, but do try to have something for each part. You need an introductory paragraph. You need 2 moral concepts or principles that are proven by 2 examples each from the story. Okay. And then a concluding paragraph. So do the best you can, and we'll work on them, and I'll hand them back to you, and you can polish them up. Maybe what I'll do is try to, if I pick them up, if I get them next Monday, then I might try to return them to you during the week so you can finalize them for the following week. So I think that's about all. I'm sure you might have questions. Email me or text me any questions you have, and I'll be happy to answer. I hope you all stay well, and I'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.